I think it's appropriate that we would introduce today the American ambassador, because not only of the fact that so many musicians from this part of the country went and made their homes in North America, and indeed brought their music with them and sent it back home to us. For that reason, I'm delighted now to say a Céad Míle Fáilte to the American ambassador, Ambassador Kevin O'Malley.
Anudran, Lani Egan, Senator Gwynny Ushla. Taras are bed in shirt in you, Sligo. Is Sanamor Dumsa Claret live in you. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how excited I am to be back in beautiful, historic, scenic Sligo for the 64th annual Fleadh celebration, a celebration of all that is Irish, the playing of the music of this land that has echoed through the centuries, the same music that has brought parishes, communities, families, and now nations together. The same music that has left these shores and made a mark in the New World, my own country, and has returned perhaps a bit faster, certainly a bit louder, but certainly true to its roots. Throughout the centuries, Irish traditional music has evolved. The ancient Gaels played pipes, as you know, whistles, and the harp. The Vikings brought the violin or the fiddle, and the Anglo-Normans added the flute. As an American, I can take some little pride in the fact that traditional Irish music was in some ways influenced in my country. Well, immigration was a heartbreaking loss for Ireland for so many generations. There was a truly positive outcome in America and hopefully here eventually in Ireland. Arriving in New York and in Boston and in Chicago, immigrants were eager to start a new life, but they were not interested in forgetting where they had come from. Traditional Irish music became part of the fabric of the big cities of the United States of America and traveled right across the land as the people emigrated from the East Coast and the Midwest towards the Pacific Oceans. From the Civil War to the building of America by creating the infrastructure of our railroads, our dams, our canals, our roads, and our buildings, traditional Irish music in various forms was literally the soundtrack of that history. As it competed against other sounds in larger and more crowded urban spaces at the beginning of the 20th century, traditional Irish music adopted guitars, pianos, bazookas. They were all included in the traditional Irish music that we know today. Pete Seeger, the grandfather of American folk music, once said, "One reason the Irish tradition remains so strong in America is that there's a treasury of magnificent melodies." What has been done throughout the American history with Irish music is simply putting new words to old melodies. With the advent of the music recording business in the 1920s, the invigorated sounds of traditional Irish music returned to this beautiful island and created a revival in traditional music. This year, the Fleadh honors my fellow countryman, James Morrison, usually referred to as Jim Morrison, whose influence is immeasurable in traditional music. I can't help but feel a connection to Morrison, as his life story in many ways mirrors that of my own family. James Morrison was born in Sligo in 1893, approximately 60 miles from where my own grandparents were still living in Westport, County Mayo. After becoming a respected teacher in the Gaelic language in 1915, he set sail and crossed the Atlantic to join his siblings in search of a new life. Just 8 years before, my own grandparents made that same voyage across the ocean James Joyce has always described as a bowl of bitter tears. Like so many entrepreneurial immigrants before him, Jim Morrison developed an extensive music teaching practice in New York, opened a dance hall, and also gave private tutoring in academic subjects. He became known as the professor to his students, and his handwritten manuscripts are legendary both in the United States and in Ireland. But it was his spectacular recordings from the 1920s and the 1930s that Morrison was best known for. His undisputed mastery of the fiddle bow, his energy, his enthusiasm, and his sheer perfectionism positioned him as one of the foremost Irish traditional fiddlers ever. He is a source of inspiration to young musicians everywhere, both in the United States and in Ireland, and it is only fitting that he is honored this week here in his home county of Sligo, and I am privileged to represent the United States government and its peoples on this occasion. I am sure that my grandparents and my parents are also pleased. One of my priorities as the United States Ambassador to Ireland resonates with what you're doing here in Sligo this week. I have launched a series called Creative Minds, and my goal is to highlight the importance of creativity and culture in the United States-Irish relationship to make sure that we don't lose any of it, that we do not lose any of it in the coming generations. Since I've launched that program, we have brought writers, TV producers, singer-songwriters, storytellers, Disney, Pixar, animators. Last week we had Glenn Hansard and Paul Williams, two singer-songwriters, and next week we're having John Pine. We are doing whatever it is we can to connect the young Irish and young Americans in matters of culture, entrepreneurism, so that the next generation will be able to appreciate, will be able to enjoy the same type of relationship between the United States and Ireland that you and I have hopefully enjoyed. We want your children to be able to enjoy that, and my children to be able to enjoy that, and your grandchildren and my grandchildren. We've been reaching out to young Irish in master classes and discussions, and it has created a lot of energy around the project. I look forward to in my time in Ireland to developing the program to highlight the work of innovators in many areas, from founders of tech companies to country singers to poets to food entrepreneurs, celebrating the impact of the creative economy and what it can do for both the United States and Ireland. The more I meet these fascinating creators, the more I understand that creativity is not the province of only arts and culture, although it is a province of arts and culture, but that arts and crafts and arts and culture are part of a very rich soil of innovation, and connections that can be made through music or film or visual arts create bonds of trust and familiarity. I can see a connection between the United States and Irish cultural connections and the burst of activity and innovations in the economic relationship between our two countries. The innate creativity of the Irish, what is actually in the blood of the Irish, and the nimbleness and the scale of the United States market is a very powerful combination. And the work that we have been able to do over the last decades proves that and makes our relationship in many ways the envy of the world. I would be remiss in not mentioning William Butler Yeats on this historic anniversary. 150 years ago, after one of Ireland's greatest poets was born, I ask you to invoke Yeats this week as you attend these clashes and these sessions and these concerts of the Fleadh. Remember what Yeats once said, "There are no strangers here, only friends I haven't met yet." I look forward to this evening's concert and fully immersing myself in the Fleadh and all that it has to offer. And I ask you to keep in mind that music and culture is a wonderful, sometimes wordless, but always effective way of communicating between peoples and between countries. Love, understanding, commitment, peace, hope, familiarity, and fun. Grimila Malagib Glar.